This is Mark Lowry with Jake, and we're doing a podcast.
Heck yes, we are. Jake here, welcoming you to this episode of the NRT Now podcast. And if you aren't already, make sure that you are subscribed or following or whatever that looks like on your favorite podcast platform, because we have some awesome stuff coming up here in the next little bit, including this one here. So this episode is going to be just a little bit different than some of our other ones, just for a couple of reasons. One being that it's a little bit shorter than our normal 25, 30-ish minutes. But we're also talking with Mark Lowry, who has kind of definitely cemented his place in the Southern gospel and Christian comedian communities. We normally don't have a lot of Southern gospel or comedians on this podcast, but man, I think that needs to change. But the other thing with this is a real life episode for me because, man, I can tell you for days about life lessons that Mark Lowry taught me, like how to bite the blanket when you get ready for a whooping, or how the bowels were the seat of the emotions in the Old Testament. And I knew about Mark Lowry's mouth in motion before I knew about Amy Grant's Heart in Motion. When I saw Amy Grant's Heart in Motion cover, it's like, man, that looks like Mark Lowry's CD. Or I didn't know about Stephen Curtis Chapman's The Great Adventure until after I had already heard Mark Lowry's The Date Adventure. I mean, that's just who Mark Lowry was for me. And 20 some odd years later, I actually get to sit down with Mark side stage and have a short conversation with him. I was totally starstruck because this is somebody that I had grown up with, and this is a hero. And not only that, but I had some equipment failures just as we're getting set up. Everything just piled into just a whole starstruck, just anxious. But I really want to share this with you because I know just with the power of music and some of the artists that we've had on the podcast, or some of the artists that we are going to have on the podcast, their songs and their stories and who they are just means so much to just so many of us. And this is that for me. Mark Lowry is one of these episodes for me, just from the preteen kid that I was to, you know, this podcast now, 2 years later, this episode, this whole podcast. If I wouldn't have listened to Mark Lowry and had his CDs and just loved that way back when, this podcast and really digging into what music means to me probably would have looked a whole lot different. I don't want to say that wouldn't have happened, but it would have looked a whole lot different. So I just really want to share this moment with you guys of me totally fangirling and getting all starstruck and choked up, but also just one of these cool experiences of getting to meet your heroes. So enough of me. Let's get to this conversation with Mark Lowry. Mark, it is just so good to see you here. It is good to finally meet you. I have grown up with you over, well, we won't say how long it's been at this point. But I want to say that I've learned some amazing life lessons from you, like sweet potatoes are not supposed to crunch. Growing up in the middle of Wyoming, I had no clue that was even a deal.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. What other things have I learned from you? I was just listening to these on the way up, actually. I'm meeting a hero here, and now all of a sudden I get here and my mind is completely blank.
Well, I'm honored to meet you, Jake, and thank you for the kind things you said. I have been doing this a long time, and since 1980, when I graduated from college.
Which you fit 4 years of college into 5.
I crammed 4 into 5. So once I got out, I started traveling and singing, and I did about 200 concerts a year between 1980 and 1988. And then Bill Gaither came along and picked me up out of a sea of young people and dropped me into a sea of geriatrics. And I love those people too. I've been blessed to work with my 2 favorite groups of people, young people and old people. And so now I'm 64 in June, and I'm kind of slowing down a little bit, doing about 30 concerts a year now, and doing a lot more broadcasting on my YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch channels. I broadcast all of those at once.
You're more advanced than I am. I haven't even gotten on the Twitch train myself yet.
Well, I just did it because a friend's child is on there playing games, and I wanted to see him play games, so I subscribed, and my name was available. Mark Lowry was available, so I took it and found out that I could broadcast there too through Restream is another. I'm very much a geek for an old person. But Restream.io allows me to send one stream to them, and they send it out to up to 30 different places if you like, so it's great. So I'm doing that, and mostly I just sit there and tell stories and talk and sing old hymns. I do nothing but old hymns. I put the words up so all the old people that follow me can read along and sing along. Yeah. And we sing hymns because they're not singing them in the church anymore. And my Facebook page is now up to 1.2 million people. And it's because of the pandemic when I went live, started going live all the time. Yeah. And Brenda Gant, she's another Facebook, she's a superstar on Facebook. Well, she put me on her Facebook page, and they're all women believers, because most of the people who follow me it's like 2/3 women and 1/3 men. And they're 65 and up. And I love that group. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now, and I'm doing a concert here tonight with Endless Highway, and then go home. I'm excited. I love going home.
Which this is, for all your hi-fi, we are like lo-fiing this. We're recording on a phone because technology is not our friend today. And it's just so crazy to see. It was back in the day, it was the Remarkables.
Right. All right, we're back.
Which at that time, it was, you get an email blast every so often. And I remember those days when, like, you got an email, it was like, ding, like, this is exciting, yes. Like, I got this. Now you get an email and ding, and you're like, oh, crap, another one?
No, another one. Got another one I need to delete.
Is it worth it? Is it not? Oh, gosh.
But back then, that was all there was. And that list got up to about 40,000. And so I had this huge list of prayer warriors. I mean, when things were going on in my life, I could rally the troops. It was amazing. And so things have evolved now to, that it is, all these different social media outlets, and it's just another way to get the gospel out. A little old lady in the Bronx recently was watching me, and she's in the projects, and her grandson's friend heard me, he's 14, heard me talking about Jesus, and he wanted to know if Jesus was real, and he wrote me. Wow. And we have a relationship now, we're talking, and he's come to Jesus, and his little brother, he led his little brother to Jesus, and he's winning all of his friends to Jesus. They're having prayer meeting, Bible study in their apartment in the ghetto every night.
Wow.
And it reminds me of that scripture, where sin abounds, grace much more abounds. Because he's now in a foster home for a set of circumstances, he and his little brother. And he was telling me, man, back home in the hood, they know they need Jesus. But here, when I was telling the home he's in now about what's happening to me, they go, oh, that's nice, It's because the more you have, the less you know you need him.
Yep. With the Gaither side, that was one of the things that was very special. You're talking about, moving from the young crowd to the geriatric crowd.
Right.
I can't call my grandma and my grandpa geriatric. They might say that now, but back then, one of our favorite things to do was go to grandma's house, and she'd have one of the new Gaither tapes coming out, which back then it wasn't just hop on Netflix or FaithTube or whatever it is now. Right. It was, you lug the two not even that. You rally these two VHS tapes, and you get to like halfway through the Gaither show, and it would stop. You'd have to, I don't care if like the Isaacs were singing in the middle or the Martins or whoever it was, you had to stop, you had to rewind, and then you had to play the next one. My kid will never know that pain.
No, it's a new day. It's changing so fast I can hardly keep up with it. But I'm trying, because it's fun. I love knowing that I can look into that camera and there are thousands of people looking back. Yeah. And it's a way I can reach them and never leave the house. Yeah. It's the best time in the world to get old.
Well, I'm trying to get there a little bit. It's coming more and more each day. But like I said, those were just super awesome memories of going to Grandma's house. We grew up on Gaithers. We grew up, listening to the Goodmans, to the Martins, to Jake Hess, to all these legends in the gospel music side. And I just look back on that, and it's just such fun memories. One of the things that I really loved about you being involved, not only did you add your voice to the Gaither Vocal Band, and the baritone, like, I don't know if the Gaither Vocal Band has been the same since.
Well, it hasn't, because with every person leaving, that's called change. Yeah. And it shouldn't be the same. It should be different. And that's what Bill Gaither, I mean, every time someone leaves him, he gets a twinkle in his eye because he gets to rebuild his group. And that's his main gift, is producing. It never worries him when people leave. I love that about him. He blesses you when you come, and he blesses you when you go. He's an amazing man.
What I always loved is, even though we're always rolling on the floor every time you and Bill were either going after each other or you had your stand-up bit.
Yeah.
Just even through like 20 Stories Tall, remotely controlled, some of the albums that were actually some of my first CDs, we're rolling on the floor, but there's that switch that happened in the middle where you start talking about Jesus, and like it clicks, it hits hard, that even though we're laughing, we have that humor, like there's a point for Jesus to be made there. And I just have always loved that story always heads that direction.
Yeah.
And there's always that little piece that makes you think and go, and you always grow every time listen to a Mark Lowry story.
Well, thank you. That was the goal. I didn't realize it in the beginning when I was just trying to do something while the little old man in the back of the church would change the soundtracks. I did not know that was going to end up being the thing that people really listened to. I noticed they would stare at ceiling tiles when I sang, but they would sit up straight and listen when I started talking. So early on, I learned to dance with who brung me. Whatever communicates, that's what we'll do.
Well, not dancing literally, because you grew up Baptist.
That's right.
It's not dancing unless you move your feet, right?
That's right.
That's another thing that I learned growing up with Mark Lowry.
Yeah, if you don't move your feet, it's not dancing.
And one of the things that I was just listening to this on the way over was about, just as an example, feeling does not define your faith. You're talking about just if you think that you're going to be saved based on your feelings,
right,
you're in for a sore disappointment. Like if Jesus comes during traffic during the morning commute, I ain't going. Like I'm sticking behind. It's like I'll hold the door, guys. I'll see you later.
Right.
But thankfully it's not. And just listening through those stories, that's just a perfect example. Something that's stuck with me. That's something that I've used more than once.
Right.
So that's just the power that comedians have. Like I said, the songs, the voice, that all has the potential to speak into a lot of people, but also the comedy, just opening up that and just getting that receptive audience there to listen to that message is just as powerful as songs sometimes.
Something about laughing brings defenses down. You can't sit there with your arms folded too well if you're laughing.
Yep.
So it does help bring defenses down, and people forget where they are, and then they'll listen.
So this last year, kind of going back to the hymns and the music, you were actually a part of our date night last night. So I just want to say thank you for joining us virtually, remotely on Spotify.
Yeah.
But we were listening to some of the old stories, some of that fun. But then you came on with the Goodmans, and just watching my wife in the car just worshiping, singing along with the track there.
Yeah.
That is just, like you say, something that's missed, I think, sometimes, the old hymns.
Right.
And I think sometimes we're kind of a little quick to dismiss them just because they're old and all that.
Well, they have dismissed them. They don't do them anymore. And they have so much theology. Now, some churches do, and I can see people bristling out there. But a majority of them, there aren't choirs anymore. There are praise teams, and that's great. That's what they want to do. But it doesn't call you in to sing with them so much. I mean, I guess it does if you learn those new songs. I'd still, I'm the old person now. I miss the songs I grew up with, but that time has come and gone.
Yep.
And so now what I do when I go to church, I look at the faces of the young people who are getting it. They're getting it. These are their hymns of tomorrow. So I try to enter in and participate. But I do love sitting there in my office and singing those old hymns, Blessed Assurance and How Great Thou Art and all those Amazing Grace. I mean, there's so much great theology in those songs.
Which I hate to say it is that, the show's getting ready to start here.
Yeah.
I see it. We're about ready to be a part of the show. I'm not sure I'm okay with that. But I do want to end with this, like with the hymns. You can tell someone who grew up Pentecostal in the current church versus someone who grew up with hymns.
Yeah.
And it's just some of those notes, like I was noticing it at our church a couple of weeks ago. I know that our worship pastor grew up Pentecostal, didn't grow up with hymns, and there's just some of those notes that hit. It's like, oh, I could tell you she grew up Pentecostal.
Yeah.
So Well, Mark,
Well, thank you so much for coming out to the concert, interviewing me. I appreciate it.
well, thank you so much for spending the time. And like I said, Mark, this is like meeting a hero.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Jay.